The idea of using a human crash test dummy may seem quite disturbing, but it's not quite as far-fetched as you might think. In fact, for many years, researchers have used volunteers to test safety of various modes of transportation. The practice of using human subjects in crash testing has been done for several reasons, including the development of safety regulations, vehicle design, and to prevent injury. Obviously. This is all something that we pretty much take for granted these days, that anything that is built, it is built to the nth degree. However, in the past, when cars were just starting to become a thing, safety was more of a secondary concern, and people just generally assumed that these death boxes were things you got into, and hopefully you don't kill yourself whilst driving somewhere, because seatbelts for the longest time just weren't mandatory. However, after a string of accidents and some bright spark thinking, you know what, there's a problem here, we need to fix it, then research started going into the topic to see what we could do to make these cars more safe. And, more importantly, how we protect these fragile bodies of ours when we get caught up in a 10-car collision. In 1939, researchers at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan started testing collision impacts on cadaver skulls. This then developed to the use of full bodies, including that one time when they threw one down an elevator shaft, in the name of science of course. While some people donated their bodies for science, many were victims of body snatching in the 19th century, with the graves being literally robbed in the name of science, of course. Whilst thankfully this doesn't really happen anymore, we need a more permanent solution. Therefore, you need a man who is fearless, someone that doesn't fear death, someone that doesn't mind getting behind the wheel of a death machine. Enter Colonel John Stapp, the human crash test dummy. Stapp was an American Air Force officer, medical doctor, and physiologist who dedicated his life to studying the effects of acceleration and deceleration forces on the human body. Stapp joined the United States Air Force Medical Corps in 1944, and from the start of his military career, he was interested in studying the effects of high-speed crashes on the human body. In 1947, he began a series of experiments at the Muroc Army Airfield in California, now known as Edwards Air Force Base, where he tested the limits of human endurance. During these experiments, Stapp subjected himself to forces of up to 45 Gs, which is 45 times more than the force of gravity. He would strap himself to rocket sleds at accelerator speeds of over 600 miles per hour, then suddenly coming to a stop, experiencing deceleration forces of up to 46 Gs. These experiments were conducted in the interest of making aviation and space flights safer for pilots and astronauts. This, as I'm sure you can imagine, is incredibly dangerous and very risky to do, but you gotta give him credit because this is a ballsy man. Like I said, all in the name of science. So much so that he willingly took part in hundreds of experiments, breaking several of his bones, and on one occasion even having his retina be detached, basically because of the deceleration happening so quickly. Man, that is not a job I want to sign up for. I'm happy staying here, thank you. This all sounds terrifying, but the data he collected was crucial in developing new safety equipment, such as seatbelts and airbags, and even improving the design of aircraft and spacecraft alike. One of Stapp's most famous experiments was conducted on the 10th of December 1954. During this test, Stapp strapped himself into a rocket sled called the Sonic Wind No. 1 and accelerated to a speed of 632 miles per hour, all in just 5 seconds. Jesus Christ. The sled then came to a stop in just 1.4 seconds, exerting a force of 46.2 Gs on Stapp. Despite the incredible forces he endured, Stapp emerged from the experiment with only minor injuries. So it became clear at this point that Stapp was a goddamn machine and couldn't be killed, so he kept going. I feel it's particularly prudent for me to say at this point that don't try this at home, but I would also be very surprised if you could find yourself a rocket car, so if you can, then kudos to you. Stapp's experiments were not without controversy, however, and he faced criticism from some who believed that he was putting himself and his life at risk unnecessarily. However, Stapp firmly believed that the data he was collecting was vital in saving the lives of pilots and astronauts, and no doubt, he was correct. Despite the risks, he likely saved many lives in the process, with the knowledge that we now have in this field, to such a point where we don't have to do these sorts of experiments anymore. As incredible as this all is, Stapp isn't the only person to have ever done something like this. As a matter of fact, there is someone that might be a little bit more famous, named Rusty Haight. Rusty has spent more than 30 years of his life testing and evaluating various safety devices and technologies, making him one of the most experienced crash test experts in the world. Throughout his career, Rusty has been involved in hundreds of crash tests, and he's even suffered countless injuries in the process. His goal has always been to try and make cars safer, even if it means putting his own body on the line time and time again. It was even his own crash test research centre that developed the airbag for the first time, and when he came to market it and try and show people that it was safe and effective, Rusty did the only thing that Rusty knew, and that was to test his own device to show everybody that it is in fact safe. That is Marketing 101, people. Over the years, Rusty has played a key role in developing and testing other safe technologies, such as seatbelts, child safety belts, child safety seats, and side impact protection systems. He's worked very closely with automakers and government agencies to ensure that new safety technology and measures are effective and practical. But perhaps the most impressive thing of all about Rusty is his willingness to put himself in harm's way to test these technologies. He's been involved in numerous high-speed crashes, rollovers, and other types of accidents, all in making cars safer. In fact, Rusty has suffered so many injuries over the years that by self-admission, he's lost count. Thankfully, these days we have actual crash test dummies that we can use to prevent the need for an actual person to have to be in those situations most of the time. So we have Stapp and Rusty to thank for these developments in things that we just take for granted. I take my metaphorical cap off to you both, you crazy, crazy bastards. If you guys like that video, here's another one just like it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.